My entire life, from childhood to adulthood, has been overfilled with joy, frustrations, grief, and pain. The costs have been enormous, and for you to understand why these costs were necessary, I must explain the scope of my mission. The audacity is this: the framework I am building is meant to operate within this reality, operate outside it, and break it. I am in over my head. I am only one man. Consider the Wright brothers. They were dismissed as nut jobs, as dreamers, as men who had let their fantasies outrun their reason. Even they operated within the framework of this reality. They were reaching for something that had never been done before. The gap between their vision and their results was the space where mockery lived. And then, at Kitty Hawk, the gap closed. The results became undeniable. The mockery stopped. The world changed. The Wright brothers worked entirely within physics. I am working at the boundary where literal and the fantastical must merge. Between because the binary is absolute. Because the fire will not accept a symbolic victory. I have accepted that the giant following will not arrive until the results are undeniable. The Geboverse will not attract a mass following through rhetoric alone. The speeches are seeds. The written object will be a seed. The cosmology is a seed. But seeds do not command armies. They wait in the soil, and the soil of the cage is not yet ready for harvest. The following, if it ever comes, will come only after the results are literal, visible, undeniable. The pioneer plants the forest, and the grandchildren sit in the shade. I didn't conceive of the rune Gebo, but I conceived of and built upon the concept of the Geboverse. I searched online for the term Geboverse and found nothing. It tried to correct me by saying, "Did you mean Genoverse?" So I can safely say I coined the term Geboverse. If you can show me otherwise, I am welcome to the feedback. I don't have a need to coin terms. Geboverse Prime and its other incarnations, such as Geboverse Apex, runs on sacred reciprocal transaction at every scale, simultaneously, from street level politics to the mechanics of existence itself. It is a multiverse of distinct verses sharing DNA, connected by cosmic forces that treat verse boundaries as suggestions rather than walls. The tiers are as follows. Tier 1, the mortal political level. Governments, institutions, factions, and the people running them. This is where the visible drama operates. Votes of no confidence, assassinations, institutional capture, military occupations, political betrayals. It operates through both formal democratic mechanisms and informal power simultaneously. Tier 2, the cosmic historical level. The first generation of divine and quasi-divine entities, whose conflicts shape the conditions of mortal civilizations inherit. Venus Morningstar, the Omni Emperor, Xavier, the Shadowmancer, the malevolent deities, beings operating above political factions. Its entities are characterized by the misuse of unchecked power. Venus is genuinely good. and cannot sustain presence in the mortal plane. Xavier has power without wisdom. The Shadowmancer has cunning without humanity. The mortal characters repeatedly defeat or outlast this tier through collective action, which is the clearest argument about the relationship between mortal agency and divine authority. Tier 3, the ancient bloodline level. Invictus and his lineage, beings whose conflicts span dimensions and eons, whose family structures are themselves cosmic hierarchies, and whose inherited trauma is indistinguishable from inherited power. Lineage doesn't determine destiny, but it shapes every condition within which each destiny gets made. Every child of Invictus either becomes him or kills him. The one who escapes the cycle, Apollyon, does so through genuine internal rejection, not external guidance. The meditation is on whether inherited nature can be overcome, and the answer is occasionally, at enormous personal cost, by someone who sees their inheritance clearly enough to act against it at the critical moment. Tier 4, the cosmic absolute level. Power becomes genuinely incomprehensible, and conflicts bend reality itself. Genesis, Omega, Astraios, Malphus, Xenon. Beings whose nature is more principled than person, whose opposition is more fundamental than any political or divine conflict. It cannot be resolved through victory. The cosmic absolute forces, Genesis as creation and structure, Omega as unmaking and entropy, are too fundamental to be defeated by anything within the frame that contains them. The only resolution is the emergence of something outside their binary, Astrios, creating conditions under which they can voluntarily withdraw. The cosmic hierarchy evolved through distinct phases at enormous cost. Era 1, Primordial Chaos. Invictus, the Shadowmancer, the malevolent deities operating with no organizing principle between them. Purposeful actors moving according to their own logic, with nothing to organize them relative to each other. This era almost certainly contains cosmic figures neither Prime nor Apex fully accounts for. Era 2, the first stabilization. Venus and the Omni Emperor build the first genuine cosmic framework together. The Golden Palaces, the Emerald Waters, the Divine Hierarchy. Everything downstream of this framework is downstream of this framework. Apex's entire institutional architecture is Venus's legacy. The framework rests on two persons, two keystones. Their joint act of cosmic governance, expelling Invictus makes him stronger. The fragility is baked in from the beginning. Era 3, the breaking. Xavier kills both keystones. The reset happens. An entire version of existence concludes. It cannot continue and reboots. The most volatile moment and the most generative, because Prime's gift to existence is Apex. Era 4, Controlled Chaos. Apex's territory, more sophisticated structures, more institutional redundancy, better designed to self-correct. But cosmic forces keep breaking through the institutional ceiling. The Shadowmancer, Omega, the Scourge, the Juggernaut Empire. Multiple simultaneous threat categories, operating at scales institutions cannot address alone. Controlled in the sense that things don't fully collapse. Chaotic in the sense that they never fully stabilize either. Era 5, Emergent Order. Genesis and Omega reach stalemates. Astrios emerges outside their binary. Both forces withdraw from the mortal plane. New cosmic ideologies are allowed to emerge in the space they vacate. Not perfect order. A self-sustaining equilibrium that doesn't depend on individual keystones. How fundamental forces work. The core principle from Prime: nothing is fundamental. Everything is fundamental until something with sufficient will, power, or love pushes against it hard enough. Both things are true simultaneously. The tension between them is where all the story lives. Fundamental forces break in four specific patterns. Keystone removal. Don't attack the structure, remove its source. The strength of any fixed hierarchy is only as robust as its least protected foundation. Specific boundary exceeded. Every protection is designed against known threats. It works perfectly within its parameters and fails specifically when it encounters something it wasn't built to handle. Xavier was a new category of threat. Ego broke reality in ways no existing framework was designed to contain. Fixed hierarchies are always vulnerable at their edges, specifically to things that didn't exist when the hierarchy was designed. Foundation used against itself. The most efficient way to defeat a fixed hierarchy is to use its own structure against it. Not to be stronger, to be more precisely positioned. Gebo extracts Xavier's Omni-Emperor powers through reproduction. The transmission of essence through offspring, a mechanism Xavier never considered a threat. Love exceeding the structure's accounting. The only pattern that produces restoration rather than destruction. Venus's forgiveness restores the golden palaces, not because forgiveness overcomes Xavier's power directly, but because the palaces were built on what Venus represents, and his complete expression of it fulfills the structure rather than breaking it. Love doesn't overcome the hierarchy, it completes what the hierarchy was always for. Apex doesn't treat fundamental forces as specific problems. It treats them as cycling and enduring. Things that cannot be broken, only navigated. The correct response in Apex is not to find specific boundaries, but to recognize your position within the cycle and choose differently at the critical moment. Prime breaks fundamentals. Apex moves within them. Both approaches are correct within their respective frameworks. Cosmic figures, the persistence problem. At sufficient scale, death is a transformation event rather than a terminal one. Cosmic figures, powerful enough to have shaped the structure of existence, become too embedded in the fabric of what exists to be fully extracted from it. Their deaths don't remove them, they restructure them into whatever form the next phase of existence requires. Venus dies, and his principle becomes the organizing logic of everything that follows. The Emperor fizzles out of existence and becomes the star of Venus. retaining blurred memories of the pre-reset Geboverse. Invictus gets partially dispersed and returns as Invictus Prime, transformed but continuous. Malphus gets absorbed into Genesis and persists as a permanently housed force within the balance. Evelyn achieves peace, but never stops being what the well made her. She persists through Omega rather than escaping it. The cosmic roster never shrinks. It accumulates. Every era adds figures who persist in transformed states into subsequent eras. The cosmic environment gets richer and stranger with every cycle. The figures that appear in one verse but not the other are almost certainly between transformations. Not absent, not destroyed. Operating at levels the current frame doesn't have the resolution to track. Invictus is the clearest example. He appears in both verses because he is old enough and fundamental enough to be visible across frames. Most cosmic figures don't have that visibility. That doesn't mean they are not there. What it costs, always. Nothing settles cheap. Every cosmic hierarchy extracts the maximum possible cost from the people and the forces involved in settling it. And what emerges from each settlement is never a victory for any of the parties who paid. It is always something new that couldn't have existed without the payment being made in full. The first cosmic framework cost Venus his life, and the Omni Emperor his sovereignty. And the cost of that framework failing was an entire version of existence. The Invictus bloodline cost Nemesis her life at her son's hands, and cost Fenris and Ezekiel everything they were. Malphus cost eons of civilizational cycles and his own independence, permanently housed inside Genesis. The Shadow Master cost Luxion complete self-sacrifice to close the door. The Genesis Omega binary cost Valencia her essence, cost Evelyn centuries of being the thing she never wanted to be. Cost Justinian his entire arc, from idealist to corruptor to Astrios. And the settlement cost both Genesis and Omega their presence in the mortal plane entirely. You don't get to keep what you built. You get to pay for what comes next. This is Gebo operating at a cosmological scale. Every gift demands return. Every cost produces something new. The exchange is always real, always proportional, and always transformed both parties. The giver and the receiver are both changed by the crossing point. The X of the rune is the structure of every transaction in the multiverse. Two forces meeting, exchanging, and neither emerging from the intersection unchanged. Make of this what you will.